Welcome to Two Pints of Lager and a Spreadsheet. Today's podcast is inspired by doing business the right way for the right reasons, and that's what we wanted is to have the conversation about, talk about. Blu Sky was born 17 years ago now, and it's always had a vision and a sense of purpose, and that purpose is being built around our people, the team, the clients, everyone we come into contact with. And we wanted to, build an accountancy practice that was a bit different to those that we'd worked in previously. That was our inspiration then, and it still is now. So just to get the conversation going, Clare.
Hello.
You're managing director or founder.
Founder,
of Venture Zero.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration? Tell us about the business. Tell us about where the business idea came from.
My background is in mental health. I've always worked in mental health. So I was actually a social worker for about 17 years.
Wow.
Which a lot of people don't know.
Yes.
And then jumped ship just because I got burnt out, actually. And I need to look after my own mental health, which I probably wasn't doing quite as well as I should have been. I then set up independently as an instructor, delivering mental health training to non-mental health professionals because I still was really interested in mental health. That was kind of where my experience was. And back then, it's quite a long time ago, people weren't really talking about it quite as much. I thought it was really important to get that message out there that we need to look after people, we need to look after each other, and also develop that self-awareness around our own mental health. So I did that for about 10 years. During that time, I became friends with Clare, who is my business partner, how many people will know. And actually, we had a conversation in lockdown. Well, when we were allowed to be like 2 meters apart in the back garden. And it was just the conversations that we had were very similar. So Claire works in environmental sustainability. That's her background, also in local authority. And she was having conversations with people coming out of lockdown about sort of the anxieties around the change in the environment, because we'd seen some good, positive things happen while we were in lockdown. And people were very anxious about what we were going to see when we came out of lockdown and how the world would have changed and what that meant for the climate crisis and just for us on a local level as well. She'd also started a community group at that time. And I was having very similar conversations in the mental health space with people who were feeling anxious about coming out of lockdown. What does that look like? Do I want to go back to work? Do I want to go back to an office? People go through an awful lot. So the conversations were similar, but with looking at different things. And then that brought us closer together. Claire was already thinking about setting up a business. I was wanting to move away from just working in the corporate environment around mental health stuff and wanted to bring it much more into the community as well. So we put our heads together, started to do the research and realised that there was a massive synergy in the two areas. So that's how Venture Zero was born, really, where we both said, look, we're having these conversations. We both want to provide information and support and help people move in the right direction in these different areas. But actually, there's a lot of work that can be done together. And that's basically where Venture Zero was born.
And a real sense of purpose, right?
A massive sense of purpose, because there's nothing, I don't know any different. I've always worked in that space where it's about supporting and educating, and Claire's been very much the same. So for us, it was a no-brainer. Let's bring it together and see how we can support people. And it kind of started off as a community group, just locally. And then it just grew into different work with clients and just changing the shift with being a bit more choosy maybe about who we work with as well, and ensuring that it's about community and connection, really. Yeah.
And Sarah, your business was born how long ago now?
Nearly 11 years ago.
11 years ago. And I know ESG for you is a big thing. Has it always been part of the business, or has it evolved or changed? Or
yeah, I think probably when we founded in 2014, it wasn't so high on our agenda in terms of understanding what ESG even was back then. But I guess as business leaders, myself and Kat, co-founded the business, we both always have this sort of instinct to do the right thing and in every sense. So it kind of made sense when we started working with the Planet Mark, who are an accreditation for sustainability and carbon measurement. We started delivering their events for them. So we started understanding a little bit more about carbon measurement and what that meant, and what it meant to be sustainably accredited. So we, back in 2019, decided to get accredited ourselves with them. They were one of our clients. And that started us on the journey, I guess, to sort of think, well, what else can we do if, it's not just surely about counting the carbon, what does it actually mean? So, of course, then in the middle, there was COVID, which for the event sector, was actually very positive, because it meant that the impact in terms of on the environment was massively reduced, because the event sector, unfortunately, is quite damaging for the environment, potentially. However, if you look at the community and social impact of events, then obviously that's bringing people together and sort of delivering good for the communities around you. So I guess coming out of COVID, we then started focusing on our own ESG strategy. We started that in 2022, and we've built from there. And yeah, I really love it. I mean, I think it's ingrained in everything we do now. And now we're really big on trying to change the events industry as a whole. So we're quite well known now across the UK for our approach. There's not actually a massive number of event management agencies that do things holistically within their organisation and for their events. I think traditionally people think, oh yes, I need to show that I'm doing something for my clients to see that I'm delivering things more sustainably or more responsibly. But actually, they're not really living those values themselves, potentially. So I think we kind of started from the ground up thinking, well, if we're going to do this for the industry, we need to operate like that ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we have it kind of ingrained in the way we run the company, really. And we are still looking at driving change for the industry as a whole. So we've been doing some work on creating more regenerative events for Destination North East England, which is an initiative set up through NGI. Which is a pilot project from the UK government. So yeah, it's been really exciting getting involved in all that and be able to lead the way and feel like you're doing something to make a difference, and you're not just doing something to line your own pocket. Yeah. And I think that's always been instinctive in me, probably as a person, that there's got to be a greater purpose for doing these things. So one is to be happy and enjoy what you're doing because you're doing it for yourself. The other is, what can we do to make actually a wider impact than just impacting our own lives? So yeah, it's been really exciting.
That's cool. And we were talking at the start before we started recording about B Corp, and Blu Sky is coming up to our 1-year anniversary as a B Corp now, and Mandy, your business, is a B Corp as well. Was that inspiration of B Corp? Did that found your business, or was it something that came as you went along the journey?
So I started Sail in 2016, so right. 9 years. And I think for me, like, purpose has always been personal. And I've had a responsibility from like an intersectional background and of like working class, LGBTQ, neurodivergent. I've always felt a responsibility to build something that I couldn't see that kind of fits for me. So I'm a designer by trade, and I was working in industry, quite corporate industries. And I just thought, surely I can set something up that has more meaning and that is working more in depth with clients, like more holistically with not only the client, but the community and their purpose and what they're trying to communicate. So I set Sail up with no money on my own. And thankfully, I made it work. We're here 9 years later. We're a very small team, but that's intentional. And I set it up as Design for Good. So working with lots of organisations that do social and systemic change. And we were doing that for the first 3 years. And then I heard about B Corp at an event I was at in London. And I thought, okay, this is great, because lots of other agencies are setting up saying they also do work for good, which is brilliant. Like, we need everyone to do that. But I thought, are we all just saying this? Like, how do we actually evidence it? Even though we were running as that intrinsically, I just felt like we needed some validation and evidence for clients. And I think B Corp was a really perfect route to do that. So we became accredited in 21, and we're just going through a re-accreditation now. And I just think it's really helped us have that kind of badge, and not just a tick box exercise, but thinking about how we can use the impact assessment to, think about how we can be better, which is really hard. It's really complex, isn't it? Because there's so much we need to do in the world and we can easily get overwhelmed. I think sometimes we've got to break it down, but the impact assessment does help that kind of break it down into sections.
I guess you've all probably touched on it a little bit. I guess the whole B Corp ESG strategy is about moving away from profit being the number one focus and around kind of purpose, impact. Do you think that's important, or why do you think it's important to business more and more as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of hiring staff, to start with, people more and more want to see the purpose of the organisation that they're joining. They don't just want it to be about, even for themselves, it's not now just about what they want to earn and they want to do more and more and get higher and higher salaries. They actually want to work for a company that they can align with and their personal values. And I think with the younger generations coming through, that's more and more prevalent now. And we see that. But certainly also I think it's just really important to understand what you want to achieve as a business, and then being more picky, like Claire was saying, about who you might choose to work with and what you deliver. And you've had that from the beginning, Mandy, but we probably haven't, because when we were small, we were like, oh, we just need some work. We'll sort of do anything. And I think as you go through your years and you hone what you're good at and who you like working with, you can be a bit more fussy. And now we're basically championing event sustainability with all our clients. And some of them are early on the journey themselves and maybe had never thought about it as much as we're telling them they should. So they're actually on the journey with us, which is great. So, my view is we don't want to not work with people that don't do it already, because we can have a big influence, because actually being a small agency, we're a small team of people of 8, but actually we influence thousands of delegates a year and thousands of attendees. So we can actually have quite an impression on, if we even make a small change to that event the next year from what they did previously when they weren't working with us, that will shift people along the journey themselves. So I think the influence bit is big. And I think we've got a responsibility to use our influence in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, when I say you can be a bit more choosy, I think we still work cross-sector. We will work with lots and lots of different organisations. But I think when I said that, what I guess I mean is it just helps when you're working with somebody who is part of the community that you want to be part of, and that aligns with those personal values, because I've always found it very difficult to separate work from home. Yes, you kind of go home at the end of the day, but for me, it's just always been about values. And I think to be part of a community of businesses and like-minded organisations who are working to the same purpose just makes going to work more enjoyable. So I'm going to be in it for the longer term as well. I'm not kind of just going to go in, do that and get out. It's kind of, I want to stick this out and see this through. Like you say, who can you influence and what conversations can you have and who do you meet? And you get to meet great people. But I think, we are also finding when we have conversations with young people, we had a few interns work with us from the university a couple of years ago, and we had to interview about 12 young people, and all of them, we were like absolutely gobsmacked. Within 5 minutes of sitting down, started talking about the SDGs and what it means to them, and how they want to they were interested in what we do because actually it aligns with the SDGs and it aligns with their values and the people that they want to support and help and work for. And we were like, wow, this is like amazing. So I think if you want to kind of get the best talent and we want to be in it for the long haul as businesses and communities, we've got to be part of it and look at it.
And I think it's that element of we're all service businesses, aren't we? And to me, that is about chemistry. And you're not going to be for everybody. If you've not got a chemistry connection when you're meeting potential clients, it's not going to be right for you. It's not going to be right for them. And I think similar to what you were both saying, just about finding people that not only share your purpose, but maybe you can learn from or they can learn from you. This isn't about everyone being perfect. I think the thing with purpose is it's about context. Everyone's purpose is different depending on their background, their experience, the change they want to see in the world. So I think we can overcomplicate it, but at the end of the day, purpose is about being human. And I really believe in that. And also, isn't there lots of research done that purpose-driven businesses outperform in the long run? So short term, it might be difficult, but long term, it's about the talent retention. It's about the clarity and the visibility that you're giving to audiences and clients. And I think also there's an element of it's easy as a small business because you can be agile and you can make quick decisions, you can test, you can measure. But for obviously a bigger, more traditional business that might have been going a long time, that's more corporate, it's a much slower process, isn't it? So I think that's the challenge. How do you get businesses maybe in production or in sectors that are a bit more problematic for whatever reason. How do we bring them on board without shaming people or shaming practices, and just start the conversation? I think that's really important.
Yeah, we're doing actually a lot of work around our supply chain engagement in the events industry. And it's interesting you say that, because we've got loads of big venues on our supply chain engagement roundtable group, AV companies that might be more traditional in the way that they work. And actually, my view of it is, as the northeast economy that we operate in, and we're based up here proudly in the northeast of England, if we don't see that there are suppliers already there that are doing this great stuff, we need to help them get to that place. Because if we don't, we're just going to turn our backs on them and start buying from suppliers in Manchester, which A, isn't good for our carbon footprint, and B, isn't good for our local economy, because we're just going to say, well, actually, you guys don't have time or resource to learn about it, so sorry, we can't work with you because you don't have these certifications. So for me, a big part of our work is around helping people to change themselves and learn, and trying to influence them in terms of why it would be helpful for them to look at that in a different way. And people talk about this insetting into your supply chain, and I think that's something we might look at doing more of, rather than just creating our donation pot to ethically offset our carbon, which we do every year. We could actually take a portion of that and say, right, we're actually going to invest in that AV company to help them get their certifications, or help them understand about them measuring their carbon. Or so I'm really enjoying that kind of work, and I think it's quite slow often, and I think you have to be very patient around the journey. But for me, it's like, if you can get that company to make one small change in the way they operate, that's going to make a difference to us and the sector. So every year, if they can make another small change, and so can we're still learning, everyone's still learning in that group, then actually we can help push each other along, which I love. And on the profit thing, you talked about profit and purpose. I think the thing we can't forget is we have to make profit to enable us to then invest in things. So, if it was me, I would just be spending loads of money on doing more around ESG, because there's so much I want to do. But you can't get the money from thin air. You need to make sure you've actually got the profit to enable you to do it. So it is quite hard balance that, I think. Because I'm all the time finding things I could spend another 5k on. And then I'm like, but where am I going to get that from? You have to be careful, because otherwise, if you don't make any profit, your business is dead, and then you can't have any employees. So,
and I think it's okay to make profit.
Yeah.
I think these conversations now have definitely shifted from when I started out independently, sort of 10, 11 years ago, where there was almost like a guilt if you're charging X amount or something, because you're making a profit. But as long as you are doing good with that profit, and you know what you're doing is fundamentally helping and supporting, I think that's okay. So I think we need to have more honest conversations about the fact that it's okay to make profit. It's like profit with purpose, isn't it? And it's fine.
It's almost become a bit of a dirty word, hasn't it? We were having this conversation the other day, and no. It's like you say, if you're making a profit and reinvesting it, and education, I guess, is part of what you're talking about, the educating the supply chain and stuff, then you need to make a profit.
Profit enables you to free up more of your time to go and help be part of these communities. Because if you're not making any profit, suddenly I have to deliver all the events again, because we can't afford to pay staff to do it, and therefore I don't have any time now to go out and do this stuff and move the dial. And so I think I agree, it's important.
Yeah, you absolutely need it to make the change and have the impact and do things like this, come away and tell your story and hopefully inspire others.
I think, sorry, John.
I was just going to say, I was reflecting on Blu Sky's journey when you were talking there, and there was a pivotal moment I've talked about before, where I was at the Thinking Digital conference, and that was the first conference I'd gone to that wasn't about tax and accountancy. Suddenly I was, and it was great. It was bright ideas, and that moment, that was like a little ripple effect in terms of understanding, what our purpose was. Because on day one, I think, when you start a business, you just want to hear lots of yeses, get some cash in the bank, and do things in the right way. And it was that moment, it was probably about 5 years in, where I was like, actually, we could really do this sort of differently. And I think that little ripple effect that we're talking about comes out, and that's the power of a small business. Really. A lot of the events we go to, I see larger businesses talking about, the effect they're having. And it's sometimes I feel an inner frustration, because I'm like, actually, how many small businesses are in this room that are doing purposeful things and probably have a wider impact collective than one business does on its own.
Yeah, you're right. You don't want people to have sort of imposter syndrome in this space, because actually everyone who's doing anything should be talking about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because that little idea could be something someone else takes and says, that's a great way of doing that. So you can't compare yourself with other businesses in terms of, oh, well, they're doing all this amazing stuff and we're not able to do that. Because actually anything you're doing, even if it takes no money, it's just conversations or it's just connecting people in a certain way, I think makes a difference, or sharing ideas and content. So I agree that I think big businesses definitely have a responsibility to lead the way as well in terms of doing good, because they potentially have more power and more influence if they're larger scale. But certainly the smaller businesses have a big role to play, I think, in connecting the dots for the community.
Yeah, it's that it's that compound effect, isn't it? You know, you kind of said the ripple effect, and I think you said one thing and then leads to another. I think that's just so important, all those tiny little steps, because when we're talking about sustainability, and we always talk about sustainable well-being, because it's not just about environment, it's about people, it's about community, it's about everything together. And when we're talking in those terms, people need to understand their why, their personal why. That needs to be the pull, not just you have to do this because it's the right thing to do, but do this because these can be the benefits to you personally as well as to your business. And I think if everybody looks at what those personal wins can be for them, all of those little personal wins become a much bigger win overall. And I think that's really important when we have the conversations. That doesn't have to be this huge big picture. We don't have to solve all of the world's problems. But if we can just do it one step at a time with everybody just doing something that's more responsible than they did the day before, that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's not about changing the world. It's about those micro decisions. And there's a stat, isn't it? Like 90% of the economy is made of small businesses or consultants or sole traders. And that's a really powerful number of people. And I agree in terms of like, how do we energize teams? Like for me, going to events is incredible for that shared connection, the conversation. It doesn't cost any money apart from your travel or your attendance or whatever. But then you can take that back to the team or get them to go to some of the events about issues that they're really passionate about, and kind of get them to bring that to the table at the organisation. And yeah, I think it's really important about leading a team with a vision, and not even like a solid set vision, but an open vision of like, okay, what else do we need to learn? What else can we do? What events can we go to? What stories can we platform? What clients can we try and approach to work with? What matters to you? And I think that brings that intrinsic motivation that again brings the talent retention. And when we went B Corp and advertised for a couple of members of staff, like I'd say 70% of people applied because they were like, we've heard of B Corp, and they were mainly young people. And that's really positive, isn't it? So it's, multi-beneficial, I guess.
Yeah. And I think one of the things with B Corp I hear is it inclusive of small businesses? And my feeling is it is. You know, that's when we met in Oxford, didn't we? At the B Corp conference, which I'll get the name wrong because it's louder than words, yeah. And you know, there was so many small businesses collaborating, and not just B Corps were there. You know, it was everyone. Is that been your feeling as well?
Yeah, I think for me the main benefit has been the community about B Corp. You know, there's a platform called Beehive, which is like a social media platform for B Corps, and you can share problems, you can share resources. It's a global platform, and I think there's lots of small businesses that are kind of leading the way with it, which is really great. And obviously the accreditation process is going to change slightly, so that you've got your 4 segments now, and you have to score a certain number of points that can be spread across the segments, however that lands. But now they're going to change it so that you have to score a minimum amount of points in each segment, which is really great and really critical and important. But I do worry that that's going to maybe affect some smaller businesses, because sometimes you've got more focus on community or workers, and not as much on environment or governance, or the other way around. So I do hope that but I do think they've got such a strong ethos around inclusion. So I'm hoping that that's going to maintain.
We were as a business, we were very much skewed around workers and community.
Yeah, ours was the same.
And I think since accreditation, what it has done, but on the journey in general, because our values about being curious and growth mindset is, what can we do slightly different or slightly better? You know, we're a small business like you guys. We haven't got infinite resources, so we'll pick one thing that we think is, you know, going to have the biggest impact for us. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things, that it wasn't just about getting, you know, the badge or anything like that. It was, well, what's next?
It's a bit of a platform, isn't it? Or a structure that you can use without overcomplicating it.
Yeah.
But again, it's only one. There's other
Yeah.
things that exist that you can be accredited to. And often, we were talking about this before, it's what your intentions are as an organisation. It's not always about an accreditation.
Yeah.
You know, some people can have an accreditation and they're still maybe making some problematic decisions. It's about the culture and the values and how you're living and breathing and communicating that.
And that's something we've talked about, Sarah, isn't it? When we talked about B Corp, and it was kind of like, you know, you've went in a slightly different direction, possibly.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we purposefully went in an opposite direction.
Yeah.
We've definitely used the B impact assessment, and it's been really useful to help guide us into the things we should be thinking about that we perhaps hadn't thought about before. We're actually probably more invested in the environment section in a way, probably because we started because of the carbon calculation stuff with our client Planet Mark. But we're doing a lot more in community now. But probably for us, it was like the workers stuff. We feel like we do all this stuff, but actually, have we evidenced that or written it down? And so as a small business, and myself being sort of the lead ESG person as one of the founders, it's quite time consuming to be pulling together a lot of evidence for any accreditation. And there's quite a few accreditations we've got as part of our industry. So it's how do we decide if it's the right thing to spend, 6 months of time or whatever, over 6 months, to kind of work out how we can build that evidence. So I'm learning, and we're using a lot of the framework, but I guess we've decided at the moment we're not feeling compelled to need to be a B Corp, because I think we already feel like we're operating in that way. But I'm still open to doing it at some point. It's just, I keep every year, I'm like, we should do it. And so now I'm like, right, we're not doing it at the moment, but we may revisit that. So yeah. But
you've done the impacts assessment. If everybody did that, which is free, that's a huge step in the right direction. You don't have to do the accreditation.
Yeah, and we created our first impact report as a business as well anyway. So I did that last year. So we've got that. I mean, it's a bit of a narrative piece. I realised afterwards that perhaps we need to set ourselves more goals and targets that we can then report against, because sort of a lot of what we do is just narrative of we've done this and we've done that and look at all this stuff we've done, which is useful even internally as a document for us to sort of recall everything we've done. But I think certainly, it's made me learn that maybe we need more objectives and targets that we can then revisit at the end of the year and say, oh yeah, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, these are things we need to do more of or change up.
And Claire, volunteering is something, that we're embracing. I remember talking to you about how do you measure the impact of that day? And that's something
we're still struggling with it, John.
Yeah.
Honestly, and I'm just like, my mind's whirring listening to you, Sarah. I know we've had these conversations before, because as a micro business, there's just me and Claire in the business, but we have a lot of communities, a lot of colleagues. We work with Sarah, we work with lots of other people, and the B impact assessment has, I suppose, for us, given us validation. If you like, we haven't pressed submit yet. We are going to do that very soon. Yeah. But we, like you, toyed for a long time. Do we go through this process or not? Because we feel like fundamentally it's what we do. Even the nature of the work we do, we deliver training, we provide consultancy, and it's always around mental health, sustainability, connections with the natural environment. That's fundamentally what we do. And it's kind of what B Corp encourages everybody to do. So we struggled with it for a while, but we've gone through the impact assessment, and I think things like the volunteering days, it's spurred us on to really start to think about, right, how do we capture what we do? Actually, people who know us know what we do because they see us do it and we tell people about it. But actually, how are we actually recording it so that we can then use that to share with other people or to gain more clients or whatever it is? So I don't know, John.
Right.
We are literally, I know literally we kind of said, I think Claire asked you.
What to get some free advice then.
No? And you we kind of use a good old fashioned spreadsheet, record the hours and then start to have conversations with people. Because I think what we learned very recently, I think it was Matt from Good Labs, when we heard him talk about impact, and he just said, like, the data and the narrative are equally as important.
That's interesting.
You know, is get the data, but then back it up with the narrative, or you give the narrative and then you can back that up with your data. So that just, you said, give them equal weighting. And I think we've got lots of narrative like you. We haven't started to capture so much of the data, which is what we are now.
Even if you just report the number of hours of volunteering.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
The number of hours that we give, the number of hours that we participate in, what we provide for other people, we're capturing all of that, and then we're going to put that together with the narrative.
Yeah.
To do what
It's hard to know what's sort of good though. What does good look like? So obviously one volunteering hour is better than no volunteering hours. So how do we kind of judge ourselves? And I think it's that you're self-driven. So you set your own objectives as your own size of business and your own scale and what's actually practical. Because there's no good saying we're going to do 100 volunteering days between 8 of us and then actually now we can't deliver any events. So actually now you're made redundant, for example. So yeah, you need to balance it with what's possible.
Definitely. I think something that we talk about it with our clients is we try to move people away from the need for volunteering days to volunteering hours.
Yeah.
Because actually somebody might say, I can do a couple of hours after work tonight, but I can't give a half a day or a full day because actually that has too much of an impact on my working day or things that I need to do with my family life. So I think switching that to just start to encourage people to engage in volunteering days, hours rather, and not days.
We found actually, I don't know if you, Mandy, give your team volunteering time to go, and I know you guys do here, and we do as well. They have two volunteering sort of / wellbeing days, so they can use them as they wish. But interestingly, I find that it's people don't quite know what to do with that time, and so actually, what we found is if we present ideas as a team activity. So for example, we support Groundwork North Eastern Cumbria. So last summer we went out to their river banks and Jarrow and helped them with some environmental stuff. And actually that enables, and they enjoy doing that and enables them to use those hours. Whereas I find it so easy to find millions of things I could do, going out to schools and doing, but I think some people also don't have that their confidence, or they don't know kind of what might work for them. So I think you do need to enable your team a little bit and help chat to them about ideas, because otherwise I think it's a known fact in corporates, so many volunteering days are unused from the benefits because people just don't do it or don't.
Can you give skills? I think people overlook the need that if you've got a skill, share a skill. I mean, it's a bit of a running joke that Long Sands is probably in Time Out, probably one of the cleanest beaches ever because everybody here just goes on litter picking all the time for the volunteer day.
Straight litter picking on Long Sands. Can't find any.
There's just so much that people can do with volunteering, and I
skill
think
shares are really good.
And I think the impact bit for me is it's not just about the impact that your volunteering has on the person you're volunteering to or the time you're given, but also the impact it has on you as a person. The fact that you feel good about the fact that you have given your time or your skill, your energy to something else, and that's a bit I think that's often overlooked. It's a missing piece because
it's a personal development.
It's a personal development. It really is, because I think there's no, you can't help but feel good when you help somebody else. It's just you just do. And I think we should capture that feeling as well, because that feeds into the whole well-being agenda and having and improving your team's well-being and morale and mental health, and that bit doesn't tend to get measured.
We were speaking about volunteering days at the last Speed Corp event, and sometimes how problematic it can be just to go in, do a day's work at the people's kitchen and then you leave, which is great, that's really needed, but how can you embed more of kind of coaching or skills sharing? So at Sale we have a corporate rate for projects, and we'll have a charity rate for projects, and we'll do pro bono work as well. So a certain amount of our hours a year are dedicated to one pro bono client or a couple. And for us, that's really obvious, easy work because we're already doing it. But that can have such a huge impact on a charity to have help with their comms and branding using pro bono stuff. So I think there's lots to be said around skill share instead of just volunteering. What tools and resources can we give these charities or organisations that are making change? We also have a wellbeing budget. So that's more about team members, I guess. So they get £300 a year and they can spend that on what they want. So they might have they might put it towards counselling, they might put it towards getting some art supplies. And we'll also speak about what clients we're going to work with and which people feel most drawn to. So we'll have that conversation quite regularly of people have different interests, what sectors they want to work in and bring into the sort of work we do. So I think there's multiple ways to do it. And just back to what you were saying, Clare, about volunteering. I think the data is like almost the easy stuff, isn't it? But then it's the time to track it. So making sure you're doing that. But I do agree that it's the narrative and the stories that have the most power. Like in whether it's like writing a blog about someone that you met on that volunteering day that you then inspired to, or signposted somewhere about something they want to kind of learn or build a career in or something like that. I think there's so much to be said for like those conversations that are almost, they're not as valued, are they, as the tangible data sometimes. And I think
Depends who you speak to.
And our last volunteering day coincided with the general election. And one of the
Don't count the votes.
it was one of the things that came out of it was one of the junior members of the team. So there was other volunteers on it and of different ages, and one of the junior members of our team got talking to a retired person about not voting, and the impact of it was she ended up voting in the election at the end of the day. And that was like, so that was one side of it. And I was talking to the other volunteers who were on it, and they were just like, this is amazing because we're talking to people in their 20s rather than, you know, and we're all in the 70s and 80s. And it was that's what we took out of it. Not clearing a rose bed in like record time, which was like...
And actually that intergenerational approach is so important.
Yeah.
You know, so actually broadening the scope of what you think about when you talk about giving your time is huge. Like think about that, those kind of links as well. It's massively important.
Or going in to do talks at schools. They might not be part of the creative industries. Like I didn't have a clue about it till I was 24. I left school at 16, not academic. I worked in loads of different jobs. So I was like, oh, there must be more. What can I do? Found my way to uni. And I think I'm so passionate now about going into schools that, you know, are more marginalised and saying you can make a career out of being creative. You don't have to just do one thing and share your story. And I think if you can change one young person's mind, and again, it's that ripple effect then, isn't it? They'll go home, hopefully, tell their siblings or friends, or they'll just remember and it'll, you know, sink in.
It's expanding horizons, isn't it? Because I find when I go into the schools, most of the kids I speak to will be saying, I'm going to be a nurse, because my aunt is, I'm going to work in Nissan because my uncle does. And they don't necessarily understand the scope. I mean, who did, I suppose, when you're at school? And a lot of the industries are hidden, exactly. They don't know that these things exist. So the more storytelling we can do, and maybe one person will think, oh, that sounds interesting, and maybe I won't go in and do that. Not that it's not valuable to do any job, but interesting to just give them more options, I guess, and more opportunity.
And I think sometimes you can have that imposter syndrome and be like, oh, but my story's a bit boring. Yeah. Like, no one wants to listen to me.
I'm not doing good like a nurse is or whatever.
So it's interesting you say about the story that being boring. When Claire and I did a piece of work last year, towards the end of last year, just on our brand, just to like really solidify who Venture Zero is, what we wanted to project to other people. And as we were doing, and we really enjoyed the process. We kind of had this document that we were working through. We took a couple of days to do it. And we were writing our values and we were what we do. And I said, oh, it's really boring. Like what we do is just so boring. And then we kind of had a bit of a laugh about it because we just realised it's because for us, it's just fundamental.
It's what you do.
It's what we do. And it's who we actually are. Like intrinsically, it's who Claire and I are. Yeah. That is what Venture Zero is and what they do. But I was like, our story's just so boring. But actually, I'd like to think it's fine, Sarah.
I think, again, that personal business world collides, doesn't it? When small business, which is what you said at the beginning, it's hard to separate yourself. So you become intertwined with it. Yeah. And then it's hard to be objective and think, oh, like, look at what we've actually done. Yeah,
because I keep saying to Claire, the example I always give is, you know, it's not like we're selling blue cups. You know, if we were a company who were making and selling blue cups and then we were talking about our brand identity and how we can project Blu Sky.
To the camera.
How we can project our values away from just selling blue cups. That might have been more interesting, but actually what we do is sort of all intertwined. Yeah. But those stories, we'll have to capture them, don't we? Yeah. In every aspect of the work that we do, we need to start capturing those conversations. And it's what you're doing with the podcast, you know? This is all, it's storytelling, isn't it? It's what's your story? And how
why you set up.
Why?
You know, what's that is radical. Anyone going self-employed or setting up a business, you're doing it to fill a need, to go against the grain, and it's a lot of risk. So everyone's got a story as to why. So we're all purpose driven because it started somewhere. Sometimes it can get a bit lost because we have to make money, and that becomes a priority if you've got to be sustainable. So it's finding that balance, isn't it?
I think you've all kind of touched on it a little bit, and I guess you're all got ESG at heart and kind of all driving it. What do you think the biggest challenges are, either for you or for someone who's maybe not as ingrained in it as you are, to kind of drive that agenda moving forward?
Getting the
Mindset change.
mindset, culture change.
Yeah, it takes time, is my big learning in our sector. I mean, as a business, I still think it's the same. It takes time for everyone to adapt. But in our industry, in the events industry, it's just, you can't do things that quickly. And it can be a bit frustrating when you're quite an action-orientated person, which is what I said. Well, sorry, it's the company business, but it's kind of me, I guess, that wants to always push things and like, what can we do next? What can we do? But I think actually I'm stepping back and thinking, like, actually, what can we do that's already here? Like, what have we already got within our gift to do and help other people and influence and have conversations? And actually maybe that's okay to just do that a bit slower and bring people on board. Because what I don't want is everyone else goes, oh my God, what, I don't understand anything that they're doing. I'm clearly behind and won't ever be able to catch up. Because actually in our sector, in our industry, with all the different supplies in the supply chain, that could be something they think, well, I don't understand what they're talking about, so I'm just going to stay here because I don't, so actually you need to not be like that, and need to open yourself as vulnerable as well. Because even though I'm a confident person, there's loads and loads of things we don't understand about it and, need to learn. So, and the next business will be able to teach us that.
There's so many big words. That's what I'll find. Whenever I listen to a podcast, I'm like, there's another big word, and I think that kind of sums up the landscape. It can affect your confidence and getting involved because straight away you feel like you're on the back foot.
I think it can be very overcomplicated. It is. It's become a massive conversation that's scaring people. Because there's so many things to do in the world. So people are like, oh, well, we can't change the world. We just need to get on with what we're doing here, make money and just keep our heads down. But I think that narrative needs to change, that it's about the small micro decisions and bringing people along. And I think there's a lot of fear as well about if you start going down a route of being a business that's about positive change, like, are you going to lose clients, especially in the corporate industries? For us, it was easy because our clients are very like-minded. We work with a lot of charities, non-profits, arts and culture sectors, but we do have some corporate clients, and we're quite opinionated and outspoken on lots of things, and that means we're not for everyone, but it almost acts as like a good filter. And I think even though that's quite bold and that's not for everyone, I think people will find you if you're living and breathing your values. And I think that's a positive thing. You might lose clients. So I think there's a fear around losing clients for being too, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be political, does it? It's just about doing the right thing. And those small changes. I feel like we need to simplify it a little bit.
I was going to say, do you think that overcomplication almost puts people off? Because it's kind of looking at it going, there's so much here, I don't even know where to start, isn't it?
Confuses people. So get people that from outside, I guess, to help. We had a B Corp consultant, B Lab leader that helped us through the process, because I think sometimes you need that person that's objective. Otherwise, it's a spaghetti in your head. You're running a business, you're doing some delivery, you're managing a team, your life is busy as well. I think that puts people off. So I think sometimes getting an external person who can be a guide it.
That's been amazing for us as well, Oh, and fellow businesses. I've come and spoken to John and many others, and in the region especially. I think in terms of the challenge as well is that you can be a bit pushy. So I definitely started out on this journey a few years ago being quite sort of full in a china shop, maybe, around some of my opinions around the events industry. So I would basically introduce these new initiatives like, we're not having any meat at this meal, and I don't basically care what you think because it's the right thing to do. I mean, I didn't say that, but that's maybe what people thought of me. So some of my clients were like, oh God. So I became known as, oh, it's Sarah's forcing us to eat vegetarian. It's all because of Sarah, and it's Sarah's thing. They even said it on stage one day at a dinner. Oh, well, because Sarah's come up with this thing, we all have to eat this. Sorry, basically. Sorry to everyone who didn't want to, type thing, as a joke. But then I was like, well, I kind of reflected on it, thought maybe this isn't the best way to get people to come on the journey. So now I'm trying to sort of backtrack slightly. I'm still doing my veggie thing, but I'm kind of trying to influence people.
I've been on the other end of it a few times as well. It was very enjoyable.
But now I'm trying to sort of reflect and think, okay, maybe this isn't the only way of doing things actually. And what we should do is help people make that choice, or make the choice that suits them, but that might be the more sustainable choice along the way.
That's the key.
And educate people.
It's the individual why.
Yeah.
It's like, what is your hook? Is going to be my hook.
Well, because if I just
No,
force
it's-
everyone to eat it, the fear is like we had an event where we had what has become known as Lentilgate, which some of you guys will remember. That, you know, could have an opposite effect and mean that now no one's going to pick the vegetarian meal because of Lentilgate. So, and that did actually happen the following year. We had fewer uptaking of the vegetarian by default. So yeah, now it's about educating people about their choice. So this dish, if you choose it, is going to have this much carbon impact, and this one's going to have this much. And actually trying a bit like the calorie count thing, and back in the day, this just now is your choice, and this is why we're doing it, and this is a difference it can make, and people can make their own choice because we're all adults. I probably shouldn't have been mothering everyone. So that's my learning.
It's hard though, isn't it? Because it's passion.
Yeah. But I think I would say as well that it's just to kind of add a different slant onto that. You know, I think given that option is great, and this is the carbon, this is the carbon, and that. But also, if my hook isn't about carbon, but my hook is about health, then I'm going to want to know what is the content of the fish that's going to make me feel better or feed my gut or whatever it is that I need to be looking after right now. So I think it's always about. Everybody's got a different frame of reference.
Yeah.
You've got your reasons for it being about the carbon. Someone else have reasons for being about money or about health. And we can't know everybody's hook, but we can present people with information. And I think it's always about education. Everything comes back to educating people,
I think
doesn't it?
essentially, like you say, if you try and drive it down someone's throat, they're going to rebel for the sake of rebelling sometimes, aren't they? But like you say, if you can educate people, then hopefully they kind of get on board, don't they?
Loads from Clare through all the time. Clare is much more environmentally driven than I am. And that's why it works. But I'm constantly kind of taking the other slant on things about, you know, look after yourself, take your time out, what are you doing? So it's kind of, it works really well. And I
Bond together.
you've got to learn, you know, and I'm learning and she's taken me along on her journey. But I'm way back here when Claire's much further forward with the steps that she's taken. But I'm okay with that because I'm doing what I can do right now.
We've got a simple thing here, this glass. So I remember coming back from an event and we used to have plastic cups came out of the water thing, and it was like, we're getting rid of those, we're getting glasses. And that was a really small change.
Yeah.
Really, really small. But now it's like that it's a given in the organisation.
And the influence you'll have had on the people who work with you now when they go to an event, because I go to events now and I won't use a disposable cup, which sometimes means I'm really thirsty by the time I leave. But it means now that I take my water bottle with me or my cup for my tea, so I don't have to use the paper cup. I mean, I'm not saying, by the way, the odd time I might have to, it's just more about thinking about things, isn't it? You now think about the impact of that and the choice you've got rather than just automatically taking the plastic cup.
But the plastic cups is also money saving to the business.
Yeah.
So then if that's somebody's to a conversation.
that box too.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no harm in that. That's good.
And it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But if that's your way into the conversation, if you're working with a business who says, actually, this can't cost me money. Okay. So spend a few quid on some glasses, it will save you money. It just happens to also be good for the environment. And,
Yeah, it's all about behaviour change, isn't it?
Yes.
It's complex. We're living in
No
a difficult
tactic.
time. But I think that you said earlier, Sarah, it's about vulnerability as well, because I think one of the most powerful things you can say is, oh, I don't know about that. Can we chat about it? Or have you got some place where I can learn about it? You know what you were saying about you and Claire learning from each other as well. I think we can learn so much from each other. We can't know everything. It's impossible. But we can know our little spheres and we can help shape that and educate people a little bit. But we have to do it in a way that's, not shaming. Because I've been guilty of standing up and talking about activism, and some people are like, this is not the room for me. This is really scary.
Oh, we had a great conversation about activism in Oxford. Yeah, it was class.
Yeah, and I think, but that can scare people. So I think you've got to read the room as well. And it's about being human, and we don't know everything. There's so much I need to learn about so many things.
yeah. It's about the fire in your belly as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's something about like what gets you up in the morning, what's sort of that fire.
And I think that can change as well.
Massively.
Over your career and over your life.
Well, I think it came into my head just with you saying activism, because I'm thinking instantly I went, yep, social worker. I know a bit about activism. And the fire in my belly went out at the end of my social work career, and I had to find some way of reigniting it. So I think this is why I do what I do now, because it still gives me that drive to make some change, social change, which I lost when the fire went out with my social work for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, that's great. We've went round in a complete circle, and I did say we'd ask one question. People, I think, and what a great conversation. Thank you, so much for it. yeah, I think my takeaway from today is it's those small things can have a huge ripple effect and impact on so many others as well.
Agree.
And well, just thank you all. That was excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.